Right now, we're happy to welcome in Jason Wright. He is the president of the Washington football team, recently hired by the Washington football team. Welcome, Jason. How are you this morning? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing great. Thank you, y'all.
Hey, congratulations, man.
Can you give us the timeline on this hiring, how it played out, how long this has been in the works, this new great opportunity for you?
Yeah, who reached out to who? Did they have a search firm? How did this work?
Yeah, so, I think it was a little inevitable that me as a former player and an executive and lead business leader in D.C. was going to eventually come across Dan and Tanya Snyder, who own the team in the D.C. area, right? Our networks just happened to come together at the right time, serendipitously for me, while they were looking for a chief executive for the business side. And they reached out, and we jumped in to a series of conversations that I describe as surprising because, they were anchored in values. Yeah, we talked about business and all that stuff, but they were anchored in values and culture, and the words they used most were things like inclusive, transparent, accountable. And we talked about what those mean in a tangible way. Talked about what Coach Rivera has done demonstrably to start to create that culture on the football side, and brainstorm about what it could look on my side. And it just got very real and transparent and open. And by the end of it, we were incredibly excited to work together.
Obviously, we're talking to you for 2 seconds, and I've seen a few of your interviews. Incredibly intelligent guy. So you knew sort of the rap against Dan, and, he's kind of an enigma to us, the fans, right? He doesn't really make himself available. Sort of the reputation of Dan. Did you have natural trepidation when they approached you?
I don't fear a lot of things, but I take things on, fairly boldly and as a general principle, but I ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And I listen a lot. And Dan, Tanya, and I did a whole lot of that. We talked a lot over a period of time. My wife could probably tell you how many hours. I don't know how many hours we talked before we got to a decision to work together. But I asked really straightforward questions of him about the way he leads, the way he wants to be engaged. He asked very straightforward questions of me. One of the more important conversations we had were each of us individually talking about our past mistakes, what they meant, what we learned from them. I can only go, one-on-one.
Give me one of his. Let me hear one of his.
That's good. Let's go ahead and break confidence on day 3. Yeah. That's a good look, guys.
Before you're in the building, right?
All right, here's a question for you, Jason. This is a softball for you. You can knock this out of the park easy. Is he a weirdo, though? I'm so surprised that you mentioned Tanya. That's the first I've heard her being that intimately involved, but I'm also maybe not surprised because he doesn't make himself available, so maybe, I don't know, maybe he doesn't know how to communicate
Do you think Jason's going to say, yeah, my boss is a weirdo?
I'm giving him a softball. I'm giving him a softball.
Y'all are 100% on one right now. No, he's not weird. I enjoyed, unless I am also a weirdo, because I thoroughly enjoyed our conversations, felt like there were shared values and shared culture. And most importantly, a clear strategic direction that Dan and Tanya had, that's shared by Coach Rivera, and that I think is evidenced by their actions. Hiring Coach, hiring Julie Donaldson, bringing in independent investigators to look at sexual harassment charges, which, I've said this a bunch lately. It is a really big deal. I've served companies on this exact topic multiple times. And people don't do that. You don't open up the curtain and let everybody look around backstage. It is a really dangerous and bold thing to do. It just means they're really committed to this. And so insofar as I've had any interaction with them, done any of my due diligence in the background, and then observed their actions, which honestly is the most important thing, surely feels like a new day.
Jason, you worked for, McKinsey & Company for a few years, I'm guessing close to 10. Was it always a goal for you to get back in the NFL on the business side?
It absolutely was not.
Yeah.
Career-wise, I'm a bit led by my nerdiness and my intellectual curiosity. I like learning. I like absorbing information. I also like really big, hairy, complex challenges, which is why McKinsey was particularly enjoyable for me, because there we take on the hardest problems that businesses face. And then, frankly, I like working with and for organizations that have outsized influence beyond the four walls of their business, whether that's through their products, whether that's through their reputation, whether that's through, and in this case, the connection to the community and the meaning and value to the DMV area, and even the role of football in society. So those are the things that sort of guided my decisions along the way, and this just happened at the right time. I happened to be a football player in identity since I was 7 years old, and came through the league, getting fired every other week for 2 years, just trying to make it, living with my 80-year-old aunt and uncle because I didn't have no money.
Wow.
And then on the other side, coming out of that after having a long career and being a team captain, going to business school, activating my analytic mind and serving these complex businesses, where else do those two things come together like this in a moment where I have alignment in a values-based way with the cultural shift that's happening, and in an area where I already live? It was just sort of the right thing at the right time.
All right, so you're on the business side, and you correct me. I'm thinking your biggest sort of obstacles and challenges right now are the name change. I assume you'll be involved heavily with that. The stadium. You're going to be involved in trying to convince advertisers to stay on board and, of course, bring in new ones. The fan experience. Am I right? Are those it's kind of like, what are your biggest responsibilities?
You got it, man. They're still shaping up. In fact, what I was saying 2 days ago, I think is already shifting. The more and more in depth I get, but there's at least two things near term that remain the same. We got to navigate a COVID season. And while there's a great plan in place with the team, good guidance from the league, if there's anything I've learned about serving companies in this context over the last 6 months, it is that COVID is a tricky son of a gun. It throws curveballs. We don't really understand this disease fully, and we should expect the unexpected. And so we need the right operating model and the right capacity within the organization to do that. And setting that up and ensuring we all feel great about that on the football and the business side is critical, because we're getting started here soon. Secondarily, it's getting this culture piece right. I've talked about the independent investigation. I'll find out, Monday as I get in office, how if it's better or worse than I think it is from the outside in, because I'm like y'all, got outside in information. Irrespective of where it is today, I know where it's going to be. It's going to be one where we have policies, procedures, and a culture that allows people to raise their voice without fear or hindrance and point out when our leaders are not leading according to our values. It's going to be a culture where a diverse set of colleagues have input on the decisions that matter most, particularly our women colleagues, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's also the prudent business thing to do. We make better decisions when people are engaged on those decisions. And we're ultimately going to have a culture of trust and accountability where we know how we're doing in all aspects of performance, both financially and the hard dollars and cents, and in terms of health and culture and the things that matter. We're going to measure it, and we're going to help each other to get better where we see we need to invest and develop. And so I know where we're going. I'll find out soon our starting point.
We're joined by Jason Wright, president of the Washington football team. He's the first black team president in the history of the NFL, currently the youngest team president in the league. And Jason, obviously you've navigated your post-football life extremely well. Is your position now, with this position of power that you have, for other guys who haven't navigated their post-playing days as well, guys who seem kind of aimless once their football days are over, you can be like a shining light for these guys to be like, hey, I can do what Jason's done. I can work my way up to run an NFL team once my playing days are over. Do you relish that role as to what you're doing with the Washington football team?
I think it is always a little bit dangerous to say, yeah, put me on that pedestal. Pedestals, people fall off pedestals really hard. So I won't say that. But what I will say is this. Number one, it is actually, while I'm in a great spot right now, and I'm grateful for the blessing to be where I am, it is not necessarily a smooth path. It looks good on the outside. But transitioning out of the NFL is a very challenging thing. I had my own very rough moments. People might not have seen it because I was at a great business school, et cetera, et cetera. But when your identity has been tied to the game for a long time, and for me, by the time I retired, that was 23 years of season in, season out, year after year, being centered around the game. It is a hard thing to reground your footing. Decide what's your talent, what is your core strength, what do you bring to the world beyond what you have been praised for forever, when all those supports that you had fade away. And for me, a big one was, the voice I had in society and in my community. All of a sudden, people didn't give a damn about what I had to say. Those are difficult things to move through. And so I have the utmost empathy for all my brothers who have made that transition and may still be stuck in that transition, even if it is many years later. I think the thing I can offer as I do this role is, number one, to do it well so that there are more opportunities for folks along a path like this. But number two is to be very tactical about, at the right time, being transparent about the tactical steps that can help you get moving. I think that's the best thing I can do, because there's one thing, look at me, beat your chest. I don't think that's as helpful as getting a little bit hands-on.
Jason, how long have you been living in the area?
I've been here since 2013.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
Now, are you going to have to move? I don't know where you live. Are you going to have to move closer to Ashburn? How's that going to work?
I mean, even if I lived far from Ashburn, which I do not, my wife is not having that, so we are staying put.
Hey, let me ask you this. So it's going to be really strange watching games without any fans. We're kind of getting used to it with golf.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of used to it now with the Caps, watching the Caps play, and then obviously the NBA in their bubble. But it's going to be really strange to watch football, both college and pro, without fans, because that's the one sport that really feeds off the energy of the fans. So can you give us an idea of what kind of hurdles you are facing just from a financial standpoint with no fans?
Yeah, I mean, obviously every club is going to be pressed. And so what I'm grateful for is that the club has done a really good job of having an austere and focused budget heading into this season. No one's going to be jumping up and down every day. That's for doggone sure. But we'll make it. We'll make it. But it is not a super pretty picture for any club, right? Fans drive the value season in, season out. That said, I think we can do things now around fan engagement that are creative. Coach Rivera is already ensuring we have a great product on the field, that we're going to continue to win more and more games. There are things we can do that, will help us on the rebound on the other side of this. But, frankly, that stuff can take care of itself later. One of my big business principles is release the uncontrollable. And the decision to not have fans in the stadium is absolutely the right one, in my opinion. The health and safety of our players, our staff, our fans, the entire community around Washington football is the most critical. And in this crazy time, we've got to take care of that first, and we'll figure the rest out later.
Jason, last question before we let you go. I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but the USA Today has just come out with new allegations against your former running back here, Darius Geis. You as the team president for the Redskins, do you have any comment on that?
No, I'm really thankful for what Coach Rivera is establishing on the football side of the house. He's putting in place a new culture, and there is a new direction that he set as a standard, across the organization. And I'm glad for the guys on the team who are up to that standard, and living that day in, day out. That's all.
All right. Thank you so much.
Good luck.
Pleasure getting to talk to you here a little bit, and let's not make this, like once every 10 years. Let's do this a little more often.
Yeah, sure thing.
All right.
Thing.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks again. That's Jason Wright, president of the Washington football team.
I hope he's here for 10 years. I mean,
yeah, he will be.
Brian LaFamina probably thought he was going to be here for 10 years too.
That's true. But I remember, we had Bruce on, and then that just fizzled. Yeah. I mean, Bruce, he just fizzled as a human, but I mean,
as a human, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully, yeah, it could be a regular sort of thing to have Jason on. What a smart guy.
Oh, yeah.
I will say, from the outside looking in, they have made some impressive moves.
They have.
You know.
It seems like they're really trying to revamp the culture there, which was something that was long overdue.
And yet that's
from the sounds of things.
That's the one thing I've learned about sports, you know, with my kids and going through the process of all of this at every level. Culture is the most important thing.
It's huge.
If you don't have the right culture, it's just really, really hard to be successful.
And apparently I was talking to someone who knows him or knows of him. My dog's going nuts right now. But he's very good, and McKenzie was very good at crisis management.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, well, this team needs it.
It's a team in crisis.
No,
It always is.
Seems like they got the right guy.
They have
always
rave
is.
reviews all around when
Very
anybody
good.
asked about this guy. Yeah.
Yeah.